Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be talking about Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, Echoes of the Empire Issue 1, with art by Jethro Morales and Roy Mercado, with colours by Rachel Rosenberg, and letters by Clayton Cowles. The fabled Black Spire outpost explodes in intrigue as a mysterious cloaked stranger arrives at the outpost, someone Doc Ondar knows is going to make business a bit difficult. While the Ithorian merchant believes bad things are going to happen, others, like Savi, thinks this is good news as the being walks into the outpost cantina, where they head into the back room to meet with Oga Gara, the owner of the bar and purveyor of information. The hooded being is revealed to be Rey, who is on the hunt for a Jedi weapon the Resistance could use in their fight against the First Order. Oga knows that's an expensive ask, but Rey did not come empty-handed, offering a strange fish from Oga's homeworld, which the being quickly devours, knowing that will do for a start. For a series meant to kind of reignite interest in Galaxy's Edge and also kind of shift the theming of the park from sequel era theming to original trilogy theming, so far we're off to a good start. Like, it's actually telling a story. There's, going to be a beginning, middle, and end. It isn't just kind of shifting things around and just like doing stories set in the OT just to justify why the park itself is changing to original trilogy set era. I do think it's weird that they are kind of bending over backwards to kind of write lore and all that sort of stuff for this when they could just do it. But I guess that's like Disney's whole thing. They have like lore with all of their lands. I personally have never been to Galaxy's Edge or anything in the American Disneyland stuff. I've been to the Tokyo one, but it feels like the American ones are really big on like the whole lore thing about the different parks and everything. The Star Wars one being a big part of that. Ethan Sachs, one of my favorite Star Wars writers, gets right on into the setup. I'm liking the idea of it being told as a tale to Rey. It's still within that sequel trilogy setting, and she's being told an old story of Luke's adventures. I kind of like that. Oga reveals to Rey that centuries ago, the Jedi built a temple on Batuu to research the ancient trees that were strong in the living force, and if they were sentient beings. But during the research, the Jedi uncovered a green egg-shaped object. Master Yoda warned them of the powerful object and how it cannot fall into enemy hands, so Master Drow and his apprentice hid the object deep underground, and centuries later, Doc Ondar, while building Black Spire Outpost, unearthed it, taking it for himself. Months after the Battle of Hoth, Darth Vader senses the object while aboard the Executor, finding it strong with the Force. He readies his forces to move on Batuu as at the same time, Luke, Leia, Chewie, and the droids descend on the planet. Although they aren't there for the Force object, they are there to meet a contact who is going to give them intelligence on Jabba's palace, so they may break in and finally free Han Solo from Carbonite. 3PO thinks that it's dangerous them being there, what with the Empire patrolling the sector, but the others know not to worry, and they need this information. Heading down to Black Spire Outpost, the rebels head through the marketplace, garnering the attention of two former clone troopers, Stack and Farmer, who have made the outpost their home since the Clone Wars. Now, I've never been to Galaxy's Edge, but I do know that these two guys, I think the lore behind them is that they are the owners of one of the shops that you can visit in the store, and they're, mentioned all throughout there. I think there's some pictures of them maybe, but they're not actual characters from my understanding that are actually in the store. So I like that the comic is actually making them characters, and I really like their sort of banter where like one doesn't really care about what's going on with like new visitors. One recognizes Princess Leia and thinks she should be thrown in a jail cell. It's kind of nice little bickering. They're kind of like a married couple, but they're two clone troopers who fought together in the Clone Wars. That's kind of cool. This issue is filled with stuff like that where it's very clearly like if you visited the land, you might like be like, oh hey, that's really cool. We get to see like that actually come to life a little bit more here in this book. But as someone who's not been there, I can see what they're doing with it. And again, if you've probably been to these lands, you'd probably appreciate stuff like this a little bit more. Luke has an uneasy feeling about all of this as they are spotted by a familiar Mandalorian armor-clad being who knows that Luke has a pretty hefty bounty on him. Luke suddenly gets gets a vision of the Force object on the planet, feeling a great disturbance in the Force. He leaves Leia and Chewbacca to go and investigate what is going on, and as Luke heads out into the nearby forest, he is confronted by Boba Fett, who tells the young Jedi that the Empire have a big bounty on his head, but he would have taken down the Jedi for free. So one thing I'm noticing is that Luke is using his green lightsaber here. It's evidenced by the hilt hanging on his tunic, which he should not have at this point in the timeline, since if they are still looking for Han, he should still have the yellow lightsaber he got at the Jedi outpost. It's very close to being destroyed by some droids very soon, but he should still have that blade. And he only made the green lightsaber blade just right before they were off to go and get Han. There's a very, very, very small window it could possibly have happened, but again, it's a very small window, and I don't think that lines up at all. So something that, like, with that continuity, I'm really surprised that just kind of got through, because that's something that they were very anal about when Luke had the yellow lightsaber, and they made like a clear continuity with the stuff that Jason Aaron, Charles Soule, and all that were doing in their respective runs. So I'm surprised that something like this got past them. Again, it's just a lightsaber color, so like, who really gives a shit? But at the same time, as someone like me who likes the canon and the continuity, it's kind of like a big glaring issue. Back in the present, Rey says that Luke never told her any of this, and Ogre stops her stories since one of the bartenders interrupts them to reveal that they are out of Yorgan fruit, meaning they cannot make their famous fuzzy tauntaun drink, something which annoys her. Rey, though, is able to bribe the bar owner into continuing the story with a bottle of spice wine from Maz Kanata's private stock. In the past, Luke battles Boba Fett, planning on enjoying taking down the bounty hunter once and for all, despite his Jedi teachings telling him not to revel in the violence. Fett thinks that he talks too much as he blasts Luke with his flamethrower, causing the Jedi to lose his saber onto the ground. This doesn't stop Luke, though, who uses the Force to hurl rocks at Fett, hitting his jetpack thruster and causing Fett to grapple to a nearby tree to stabilize himself, swinging down from the tree to kick Luke in the gut. I like whenever Fett gets a moment like this in the comics where he can be badass and whatnot. It's really cool, seeing that sort of stuff. I know everyone likes that sort of stuff, but it also makes what happens in his supposed next appearance in Return of the Jedi so much more funnier, since in that movie he just kind of shows up and just immediately gets his ass handed to him by a blind guy. It's really funny that writers and artists and all this stuff would depict him as this utter badass, but then in the actual movies he's barely nothing. He's a big jobber. Luke finally gets his lightsaber back and slashes at Boba, whose Beskar armor saves him from being cut up by the blade. As Doc Ondar makes off with the Force object nearby, Luke senses it, which causes Fett to get the upper hand in their battle, stabbing Luke in the cybernetic hand with his vibro knife, relieving him of his saber yet again. Fett ends the fight with an explosive missile from his wrist gauntlet, telling Luke that he's worth more alive, so he's going to bring him into the Empire in one piece. Luke moves the saber with the Force behind Fett, as elsewhere, Leia, Chewie, and the droids hear the explosion from Luke's battle, meaning that they have to move faster now since their cover could be blown. Leia goes and meets with Savi, who asks how the Gatherers can help the princess, as R2 and 3PO meanwhile bicker about the princess being annoyed with them, with 3PO considering selling R2 to the droid outpost in the marketplace. The droids' arguing is put on hold as they watch a TIE Echelon shuttle screech over the city. Fett and Luke's fight is put on hold at the same time as Ogre contacts Fett, telling the bounty hunter that she needs Luke alive for something important, and Fett owes her, so he needs to just walk away from this. With no other choice, Fett leaves Luke alive, wanting him to remember who would have won their fight. Luke doesn't think that Fett would have won, as he reveals the activated lightsaber humming behind Fett's head, who is caught off guard by the weapon. He vows to fight Skywalker again very soon before taking off into the forest, leaving Luke to collect the weapon and leave himself. Now this is extra funny, being that indeed the next time they fight, which I guess is Return of the Jedi, it's even funnier because Luke just kind of walks all over Fett, immediately cuts his gun in half, cuts free from his grapple hook, and then he's taken out by a blind guy. It's just so funny that, you get all these badass cool moments, which I really love, and then you remember, oh yeah, Fett gets basically killed by a blind guy. Back in the outpost, Stack and Farmer try and entice people into their military surplus store when the TIE Echelon shuttle finally lands in the center of town. Farmer thinks that it's some low-level officer trying to get a promotion by harassing locals, but Stack recognizes that shuttle as not just any Imperial shuttle, as Darth Vader disembarks, telling his troopers to search the port and kill any and all who get in their way. Echoes of the Empire issue 1 was a pretty damn good book. It's nothing that's going to, change the barometer on canon, or, there's not massive sweeping revelations in it. It's just a real straightforward Star Wars adventure set in the Galaxy's Edge, which is undergoing its own change in real life. I really liked the Luke and Boba Fett battle. I still think it's very funny that, Boba Fett gets all these really badass moments in the comics and other media, and then you get into the movies and he's just kind of like a bumbling fool. It's very funny that they keep trying to make him a badass because he looks like one. There is some canon issues, like with Luke's lightsaber being green and not yellow, which it should be at this point in the canon, but whatever, that's like nerdy semantics and everything. I had a really fun time with this issue and I'm looking forward to the next one. I'm going to give this issue a 7 out of 10.